Hmm. You know, most of the recordings start with your hand up, Roland. Like the first picture is you going like this.
This is
Back to
why
you.
my spiritual teacher called me the student, because that's what would happen. I think that this is just a way that I am in the world. I just wanted a reminder that this is going to be shared on YouTube. So
Mhm.
um, the
And
recordings are meant to be shared.
and so I had a question, Ben, is this kind of like a private YouTube thing where people are given a link, or is this a universal YouTube thing where anybody in the world can come and see it?
This is a universal, it's available to anybody. And one of our sort of um, the policy as it is developing is that if anyone objects, if anybody doesn't want this recording available, or if there's any element of the recording, like at the end we get and you think, oh, I really shouldn't have said that on camera, then we won't post it. So it's really falling into the transparency. If there's any reason for confidentiality, if there's any reason that anybody doesn't want this posted, let us know and we just won't, or we'll edit out the parts that you don't want available. But otherwise, we're assuming that this is open information for anybody who can't be here and who might want to join, who we don't know yet. So we've just left it as an open thing, public thing. All right, so it sounds like this is, I just want to kind of double check. I'm making a proposal that rather than actually scheduling times today, we all agree that we'll put our time availability into the when to meet, and then that'll give the caretakers of each guild the information they need to make a proposed time, and we'll consider that a proposal. So basically, the caretakers can look at what works for their guild, and then we'll send out to everyone who's interested in that guild, does this work for you?
And
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, but just to say, and not to complicate it, I'm available all the time, except where I've, pre-booked a meeting already. And in some cases, I'm meeting on a fairly regular basis, but maybe only once a month, on a Tuesday,
Yeah,
which also gets changed. So I can just say I'm available all the time, but that isn't necessarily true.
yeah, and I think that that's one of the things. Oh, good question, Becca. By when? I think. Well, that's kind of a question for the group, really. How quickly do we want to be able to pick times for the next meeting? It should be relatively simple for people to fill it out. It doesn't take a lot of time, especially since it's a generic schedule. So it's not really about this week or next week. It's just generally speaking, when do you want to be available? But I think that's a question that we should answer. Um, I mean, I would say quicker rather than, if the next day or two, something like that, by end of day tomorrow, or by, I don't know.
I
Thoughts?
just I just did it super easy.
Yeah.
It's really accessible tool. It's super easy to just pop.
Yeah, it's dead simple. You just kind of paste
Yeah,
paste in the
yeah.
times. And
Coming
so
up to
let's
speed
let's
is
say
easy. Yeah.
let's say by tomorrow. Roland, you're muted.
For people who aren't used to using it, you don't need to put in a password to sign in. You can just put in your name and click sign in, and then you'll get a duplicate of the calendar that you can fill out for your availabilities. I'm saying that because I was confused when I first used it, that there wasn't instruction about how to just put in my name.
Hmm. Yeah, you only need the sign in if you want to come back to it and change your answers. So you can sign up, but you don't have to. All right, so thumbs up, basically, we'll send out, because we'll also send out a summary email of the charrette, and that'll include a link and say, please sign up by then. All of these dates will have that asterisk of, we understand that sometimes people aren't going to be available, meetings pop up, things happen, schedules change, but this will be a starting place. And that takes care of most of the work of setting up those meetings. I also wanted to, so there's a couple things that I'd like to go over as sort of general guild things. And I think if we can check them off, then that'll be useful. Because the other thing we talked about a little bit was how to integrate people when they aren't available for the meetings. It's kind of Heather's point. So I want to make a proposal there. Linda, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just filled out the calendar, just general times I'm available and that would work for me to meet. Do I have to do something or will you just gather those in some way?
Yeah, we have access to it. It's a poll
Okay.
we've set up, so we'll have
Nothing I
access
have
to,
to do.
yeah,
Okay, great.
cool, thank you. So a proposal I want to make in general about policy for the meetings is that we, using the good enough for now, safe enough to try, and the framework of sociocracy, we a couple little changes, but I think they'll be helpful, is when people are signing up for a guild, they're signing up as interested in the guild. And basically each guild has an interest list. And we think very lightly about membership. And if you are interested at all in the work of the guild and you're signing up for it, it means you'll be on an email list that will be reminders about meetings and what the agenda items are, and summaries of those meetings in case that you can review if you want to. And so you can show up at the meeting and you'll be in the loop. So because I think it will be advantageous for us to have people who are interested, who aren't even, maybe I won't even show up at the meetings, but we have them on the list in case we want to start tapping them on the shoulder for, oh, this might be a good task for you to do, as a way of bringing people in. And so in terms of the meetings themselves, if we think about the meetings are really proposal shaping in sociocracy language. So you have the meetings, you come to what you think of in the meeting as an agreement, but we handle that as a proposal, and that all of those agreements then are sent out after the meeting to the interested list for people to register concerns or objections. And we have a timeline. We say, what's reasonable, 24 hours, 48 hours to respond to the things that are coming out from each guild. And if no one has an objection or concern, they're approved. And if anyone does have a concern or objection, they're addressed. So I think that will, just as a way of working, it will make it a lot easier for people to be able to have variable involvement in the guilds. And it also seems to be just a good practice. So I don't know, are there any concerns with that? We'll use the model. That's a proposal that as a sort of a standing way of working in the guilds. Are there any concerns, objections, questions? Becca.
So it seems to me it would be good for you to know when you're scheduling which of the people who've marked interested really plan to try to show up to the meeting, because otherwise you're trying to wrangle too many people's schedules.
So asking then for an RSVP if you're planning to attend.
Interested. Maybe we could have some way to distinguish between interested, send me the minutes, and an occasional task versus please loop me into scheduling meetings.
Well, and this, I think here's my friendly amendment to account for that, is that everyone who's interested gets a notice that the meeting is happening, and with a request that if you're planning to attend, you just RSVP, I'll see you there.
But so, I mean, when you're filling out the when to meet, and you're trying to look at, if I've said that I'm interested in all of the guilds, and you're trying to find guild times that I can meet all of, but I'm really only planning to come to 2 of them. Don't you want to know that when you're ranking?
I think that'll get handled with the proposal to go out. I don't know. Other thoughts? Jake, you got your hand up. Some suggestion?
Yeah, I'm wondering if is there, as we put in the time, is there our interest in the guild? Is there a way to go like on a scale 1 to 5, with 5 being really interested in 1? Is that what you're talking about, Rebecca? Like some sort of scale?
Yeah,
kind of
I mean,
thing?
I just can say right now, I'm willing to keep showing up and prioritizing legal and I would like to add heart work if I can, and I would love to be informed about at least a couple of the others, but I'm not planning to try to show up to them. So
Mhm.
if I click interested, and when I clicked interested, I didn't include those other ones that I was like, okay, there's no way I can do more than 2, but
Actually, yeah, and this is a proposal for all of the guilds, and one of the questions, now we have set time to go through each of the guilds, and that one of the questions is what's the expectation for membership for people to be involved? And I think that's where we can just handle that. We can, as we go through, and we can also think about setting up the poll in a different way. Right now, it just, check the box. We could have 2 boxes, or like Jake saying 5, like a 1 to 5. I think right now it's a small enough group that we kind of get a feeling for where everyone's interest is. So the caretakers will get some sense. And if we just kind of, like you're saying, you just given us your priorities, and as we go through the guilds, I think that'll become clear. And for the caretakers, then they can work with that information. So, Linda, you're muted.
As we go through the guilds right now, then this is our opportunity to say whether we are interested, right? Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then for me, I think it makes sense if I'm interested in something and I get a notice that the meeting's happening, blah, 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 then I RSVP for sure to let the caretaker know that I'm going to come. That, right, to me, that would work perfectly.
Yeah, and I think it's also because
things change on our calendars.
But the meeting is set, I assume, by the core people who have committed themselves to being at the meetings. We're not trying to find a time with somebody who might or might not be there, right?
Exactly. And it's also, that allows because when you're putting the notice out about the meeting, hopefully there's also agenda items. And it may be that your desire to attend or not attend depends on what's on the list.
Yes.
This feels like it's involved. Nothing on the list is really about me this time. So, I'm going to take a miss, or I'm not usually there, but this thing that you're talking about feels important.
Right.
Barbara, over to you.
In the scheduling part, like this first step, setting up the meetings, like taking the data from the scheduler and figuring out, I'd like to be able to signal in some way which one is my first, second, third kind of thing, like which one is priority. In terms of scheduling, like if there's any kind of scheduling conflict, I want to make sure that this particular guild is the one that I get maximized for, am I making sense? Do you know what
I think
I'm saying?
so. Yeah, I think, we'll just make sure we record level of interest per guild as we talk about it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I think those are the kind of the global things that I wanted to propose. The other thing I think is actually, no, there's a third thing I want to propose, which is that all of the existing members of the current guilds, or the guilds that morphed into the new guilds, as part of our homework, that we agree to come up with a bullet list of what new members know. Like if we had just a short list of, I think, the key things to bring a new person on board that they need to be aware of. It could be a resource. There's this spreadsheet, or there's this document, or it could be where we think things are in the process. But just for each of us to, as part of our homework before the first meeting, to just think, what are some of the key points that we want to make sure new people are aware of. And I think that'll take care of a lot of, that'll fast forward a lot of the work about bringing people up to speed. Any thoughts or concerns, objections, additions to that?
Who's assigned that homework?
Everybody who has been involved in one of the guilds. So relations has been working, and finance and fundraising has been working, and process hasn't really been a guild, but I can point, it's Ronnie and April and I basically who've done most of that. So those are the 3 I'm thinking of there.
So you want each person individually to do that, to think about that.
Yeah,
before first meeting. Okay.
yeah. And again, it can be super simple, just a bullet list. It doesn't have to be, you know, like what we need to bring people up to speed on, but just like placeholders for things that we want to cover. All right, I believe that is more of the generic stuff. And then we were just going to go through each of the guilds, and the key questions are who want to be the caretakers? How often do we want to meet? And what are the brainstorming the agenda items for the first meeting? And so does that sound like the complete list of things to cover? When the first meeting happens, we've just talked about in scheduling. So who wants to be a caretaker? Oh, actually, no, sorry, level of interest. So for each of the guilds, we want to cover who wants to be the caretakers, the level of interest of other people in it. Are you just kind of a fly on the wall? Or are you planning to show up at meetings? And what are some agenda items for the first meeting? Does that sound complete? Are there any additions? All right. So number one guild is Artwork and Philosophy. So, oh, and I guess on the morphing into coordinating team, one of the things we talked about is to make the transitions easier. There are basically one of us has been the caretaker for each of the guilds already, and so we will continue in that caretaker role, and we want to have a co-caretaker, somebody who's willing to, you know, learn the ropes and take on some of the responsibilities, but you'll have a partner, you'll have a buddy for figuring that out. So Heartwork and Philosophy, we actually have our co-caretakers, right? Roland and April. So we got that. And then how often do we think the guild should meet?
Can you go, I wonder if at this point it would be good to have the people who are either interested or already involved, so that I'm not sure who's supposed to talk about how often we want to meet. If is it just the guild, or is it everyone?
Good point. Yeah.
Just the guild.
Cool.
It seemed to me, yeah.
Okay, so right. So then let's do, I think the easiest way to do it is thumbs up if you're interested at all, and then we'll do another one for continuing thumbs up if you're hoping to attend the meetings. And I'm just taking notes, so you know, if you want to throw in, like Barbara, you were talking about actual prioritizing things, then, you know, throw that into. So Artwork and Philosophy, how many people are interested? So Jake, April, Roland, Becca, Linda, Sandra.
Can I do a partially interested?
Yeah. Well,
I do
and
this.
and the interest is at this point, interest is I just want to be kept in the loop with emails.
Right.
So actually, is there anyone who isn't interested at all in Artwork and Philosophy? Okay, Barbara, you're on the fence?
Well, it's bandwidth.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm interested. I mean, I'm interested in, but this one, yeah, I mean, if I got emails, that'd be fabulous, but I may or may not read them according to what's going on in any given time
I think
frame,
that is
right?
that's a perfect description of what being interested means.
Yep.
Okay.
That's how I
So
see
then-
interested.
Okay,
Just
so
email and-
add me as interested then.
Okay, so all interested. Now who is thinking they will show up for meetings? Thumbs up. So, all right, okay. Oh, this is hard. The recording it is hard. Ronnie, Roland, April, and Linda are, oh, no, okay, so Roland, April, and Linda are thumbs up.
And Jake.
And Jake.
And Jake, okay, April, Linda, Jake. And then maybes. So maybes are Becca, Sandra, and Ronnie.
So I'm curious about recording the maybes because that would seem to me that that's just part of the interested group.
Well, but if they may or may not want to show up at the meeting, it's sort of like I'll read the email, but and if it's interesting, I might show up. So I think it's the main consideration goes to Roland, April, Linda, and Jake's schedules. And if we can also fit in others, then that's great. That's a bonus.
So then
For me,
the way
it has to be a sometimes because I might have other priorities. So it's a less of a priority than maybe the networking one. So when I say maybe, it just means I can come sometimes, but not to every meeting.
So in terms of practicality for scheduling, what that means is that the people who are totally thumbs up, that we look at the schedule and make sure that those people fit. For the people who are maybe, we look at them as a secondary tier and try to fit as many as possible. But if it doesn't quite work out, then that's just the way things are.
Yep.
And for the people who are just interested, we don't worry about availability.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Cool. All right. So we've got caretakers and so for those who are thinking about attending more regularly, are there thoughts on how often it would be useful to meet? And I will say, with the understanding, there's always inter-meeting communication possible. And oh yeah, that's actually the only thing that just things can happen in between the meetings. But how often is it useful to meet to kind of make sure that you're on track? Thoughts? Anyone make a proposal? April?
Every 2 weeks.
Any objections, concerns with every 2 weeks?
My sense, you know, I haven't been part of it other than the one time we met, but my sense would be every 2 weeks to begin with, and we might go back to once a month after that.
Cool.
Agreed.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's a really great underline. This is all provisional. It's all in the spirit of experimentation. As we get into it, we're going to feel our way through it, and we'll figure some other things out.
Being responsive to the surprises.
Yep. All right. So is that everything covered? We've got caretakers, frequency of meeting, level of interest. Oh, agenda items. What are, do we want to talk about some ideas to put on the first agenda? And I can share, basically, we do have some things already identified in the driver statements. So shall I bring them up or do we want to just riff on it?
That would be useful for me, and I think probably, in my opinion,
Okay.
and this is just me, starting with what is on the driver statement that was agreed on collectively is at least a place to start first. Yeah, but I think April also has something to say.
Yeah. I think as a group, we have to brainstorm a list and look at what we have already as well, but not take what we have already as the total determining thing. I think it's only fair to have a brainstorm opportunity. I also think that we then need to do a priority exercise of some kind and do some sorting around that and decide what the sequence is of what we're going to do. And then after that, take a look at time, see what we can fit in. I am always over ambitious. I'm just warning my fellow guild members.
Yeah, actually, this is a good time to bring in a reminder about how sociocracy works and how we do all of our meetings. So all of the meetings are you may have an agenda ahead of time, but you do a check-in on the agenda before the meeting to make sure that you have all of the concerns listed, and then you prioritize the ones that feel like they are the best use of time to start. So, and then you can time box the items that you want to carry. And then the items that aren't covered become tensions in the hopper for subsequent meetings. And then if you can't get through all of the items, one of the next step questions is, can these wait until our next meeting, or do we need to schedule a separate meeting to deal with them? So that prioritization process is built into the meetings themselves. We don't have to we only have to brainstorm today, and then we can prioritize at the beginning of the meeting. And that's actually just a really good process to, to use. So I think, Barbara, hands up.
I'm sorry, my mind just went completely blank. Darn, because it was important. Oh yes, I got it. Is there a place, what you just said, Ben, like that meeting, like the meeting summary?
Mhm.
Does that exist? Is that written down somewhere? And
How to
can we
do-
link
how to do the meetings?
just what you said? Like you just did it in a less than 5 minute blurb, like maybe
Yeah.
2 minutes,
Yeah.
and it was super. I couldn't write fast enough. Just for a reference point,
We
does
do.
that?
Yeah, we have it written
And
down.
and can that be linked into the sharings somehow so that
Yeah.
we can
Yeah,
access that?
This is, I would say this is actually part of the caretaker responsibility. There is where we have it written down is how to huddle, and
How to huddle.
how
Okay.
to huddle. And that is the caretaker's job in sort of facilitating the meeting. And that's also, not everyone needs to know that. Only the caretakers or the people facilitating the meeting can guide everyone else through that process.
It's super helpful though.
Yeah.
I'd love to. Yeah. So I can probably find how to huddle at the help
Yeah.
desk. Okay, thank you.
Well, and this is like a really good example of what are some of the things that we need to include in the onboarding, right?
Yeah.
This is, that's kind of, this is a great, the system itself will identify the things that we need to be, make sure that we cover. Cool. All right. So I think what I was hearing April say is that we should brainstorm and then also review what we have before. So we can just brainstorm now, and then part of that prep work for the first meeting will be bringing in all the stuff that we've already identified. And then in that first meeting, the first step will be, here are the 5 or 6 things. My suspicion will be that, and I don't even think it'll be 5 or 6 things, but my suspicion will be that if we brainstorm, we're going to duplicate some things, and that's good because it's anti-fragile. Linda, over to you.
Yeah, one thing that is making this kind of crazy in my head to try to prioritize is I don't in my brain have sort of an overall perspective of the overall priorities for the Lifeboat Academy. I mean, I'm going to show up for the heart part of that, but until I understand what's really up, where things really stand with the whole project, it's hard to prioritize. And I'm not sure how I would learn that exactly.
Well, this puts me in, well, it's all the stuff that we've talked about today and the stuff that's on the Miro board. And because the action primarily, the whole has hived off to the guilds what the whole thinks the priorities are. So that's actually in your driver statement.
I see.
The guild's part of the priorities is identified in their driver statement. So the whole has handed off to the guilds. Here's where we think your focus should be. And that's, and then yesterday when we did the guild reports where each guild talked about where the focus was, and then we did the coordination, that was, that is the main focus of what we are working on this year. So it's sort of this summary. And I can give you, I think we could go through and actually give some like 1-sentence versions. That was one of the things we talked about yesterday, is practicing that story.
Yeah.
So, as we meet in the guilds, the 1-sentence version about the Lifeboat Academy, the 1-sentence version about how the guild fits, and then talking about the priorities, that's just a good exercise.
Thanks.
And I realize we're not doing circle, and I'm hoping that this is okay, and I'm trying to get us through stuff. So we're all keepers of the circle. And if I'm causing problems here, please, somebody take the wheel. Becca, I see your hand is up.
So having missed the coordinating thing last night, or yesterday, I'm also feeling a little in the dark about sort of priorities, but I'm fine with trusting the whole. I don't feel the spaciousness enough for a brainstorm right now. And I'm guessing it's not just me in terms of being already behind schedule on our timeline for the morning. So I'm wondering if that kind of work needs to happen for individual guilds, if it could happen in the first meeting or some other way.
Yeah. How do people feel about that? I'm seeing thumbs up. It
I'm in
makes
agreement.
sense. And I do like
That was
Roland's.
gonna be my point
Yeah.
too, is that I feeling like if we have to get through 5 guilds, I mean, the first one takes a little longer just because, you know, there's some general understanding to go through, but that we do that brainstorming in the first meeting. That's what I was going to suggest, because otherwise it feels like we don't have time and capacity to do that now.
Cool. All right. That's easy. I see no objections. One last call for any objections. Thumbs up. Okay, cool. Perfect.
Can you see my thumb when I pop it through the, like, you don't see me, but when I
No.
when I send the icon, do you see the thumb?
Well, yeah, when you send the icon.
Oh,
we see
okay,
it.
that's
Yeah.
what I want to know. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Roland, your hands up.
I just wanted to point out that was a great question to ask because one of our reminders, one of our agreements is frequent reminders. And that was really useful for me to ground myself back into the process. So I just wanted to point out that the agreements work.
All right. So then I believe we are covered on heart work and philosophy. All right, moving on to principles and governance. I am the old timer caretaker. And is there anyone who, actually, I guess let's start with levels of interest and who is at least interested in principles and governance.
I'm interested.
All right, so not Sandra, Heather, or Ronnie, and everybody else. Okay. All right, of those, who is planning on attending meetings and up or even? So,
At least the first one.
okay, so April, Barbara, and Linda.
I'm actually going to indicate partial interest.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
And then who was on Milan and Jake are iffy. Okay. All right. And then who would be willing to be a co-caretaker with me? April. Yay. Okay. And how often do we, those of us who are interested in attending, how often? 2 weeks again, or every 2 weeks? Actually, if we have everything every 2 weeks, and we can sort of stagger,
Yeah.
you know. So 2 weeks. Anything else that we need to cover, or is that, it sounds like we've checked the list. Nothing else? All right. Guild 3, finance and legal. And I think I am also the caretaker. I'm the current caretaker. And we'll continue. So again, people who are interested in finance and legal at all. So that is Becca, Roland, Heather, Barbara, and Sandra. And those who are thinking that they will attend meetings, up or, so an if for Sandra. Okay. All right. And who would be interested in being the co-caretaker? it is not the responsibility, Heather. Okay. Remember, the responsibilities for the caretaker are you don't have to do it. You know, you're not doing all the work. You are just helping to organize the meetings and get notes and things like that. So I've got an iffy with Heather and Barbara. So we'll figure, I'll do a little corridor, what's that called? Corridor diplomacy.
Well, and they may be
Oh,
caretaker.
yeah.
I just feel like I don't know enough yet to step into.
Well, and that's the thing, you have a buddy, right? So
Yeah.
you don't, this is you're getting mentored, or you get to shadow. So,
Yeah,
But-
that's
and-
actually why we came up with the co-caretaking thing, was so that it would be one person who's been in the role for a while, and then another person who's shadowing and can slowly take on more of
Right.
that coordination.
mhm,
This is also not my number one priority, Gilda. That's also part of
mhm.
my.
And just to make sure that being caretaker, you don't need to know the inner workings of the guild. That's another that's to be a peer, or a, what's the word that we're using?
I think we're going with mentor at the moment.
Peer or mentor or knowledge keeper. Then that is, that's where you progress in the guild. The more you know, then, and we'll figure out badges for this guild, but for all the other guilds also. So
Yeah.
caretaker is separate, and then there's the helper,
Helper, apprentice, peer, and mentor. And the caretaker role is distinct from that. So pretty much not helpers, but anybody up from helper can be a caretaker. And it's mostly making sure that the meetings happen, and that there's some record, and that we're sharing out the information as necessary. So it's much more like a secretary, but it's even a light secretary role, because you don't have to be the one who does the notes. You just have to make sure the notes get done, if that makes sense. All right, so I think then finance and legal is covered. Barbara.
I forgot to do this with principles and governance. So for me, the finance and legal is my number 2 priority of the 3 guilds that I'm interested in. And the
Number 2.
principles and governance is the number 3 priority of the 3, just for the record.
Yep.
Thank you.
So principles and governance is number 3. Got it. All right, moving on to Guild 4, Farm, Food, and Housing. And Roland is the current caretaker. And actually, does somebody want to lead this? Because I need a little bio break, and I can be right back. Roland, do you want to take it? So we're looking for interest and meeting time.
Okay, where are you just writing out by hand the interest? I'm going to put it in the chat.
Oh,
so
awesome.
that you have the record.
Cool. And I will be right back.
All right. So just in terms of interest, who is interested in this guild, put your thumbs up. Okay. Sandra, Barbara. And Sandra and Barbara. Okay. In terms of what's the next one? It's who will come to the meetings, who for sure want to come to the meetings. And Sandra, I think that's it, right?
Barbara has her thumbs up. Sandra has her thumbs sideways, is what I see.
Yep, I put that in the chat. And then it is frequency of meeting. Any proposals or suggestions?
I want to say weekly. Scary, hey? weekly, just to at least to get us kind of moving on it.
Okay.
Can I ask a little quick question aside? Barbara, I think I've heard your name before. Are you one of the people interested in living on the land or living at the property? Is that like happening, or because then
Well,
it's
don't know
hard to
yet.
be part of that farm and housing if someone's not living there, and I was curious if with your thumb up.
Yeah, it's a strong potential.
And I think Heather had something to say.
Yeah, I was both on mute and also I had my computer tipped so you couldn't see that I had my thumbs to the side.
Okay.
I'm super, super interested in this. I'm not living on the land. And so I just want to be seen kind of as a resource, or when the agenda seems to be something that I can contribute to, that I would kind of attend the meetings. Just from my farming and housing background and everything else.
Okay. All right. And weekly meetings.
At least
And
to
on the
start.
land, that's a good idea.
Mhm.
All right.
And this
Yeah.
is my number one priority for the schedulers.
But is that a decision in weekly meetings, or is that something you want to discuss?
I think, well, and I'm also, obviously, I'm on that list and coming to the
Okay.
meetings and weekly.
Okay.
I would vote for all of those things.
All right. I think we're on to Guild 5.
Guild 5, network and outreach and network. So who has an interest in? Thumbs up for interest. So everyone. That makes it easy.
Nice.
And outreach. And who is planning on attending meetings? Ronnie, Jake, Linda.
I have a question around that because I've really been enjoying doing the memes. So that's my main interest in participating in the group. Oh, I think I've just answered my own question.
There we go.
There you go.
The system works. All right,
Thank
so hang on. So thumbs up is Ronnie, Linda, Jake, Sandra. Okay, and maybe is, oh, do we have a co-facilitator for the farm?
Not yet. Oh, sorry.
Okay,
For farm.
okay.
No.
Okay.
Wait, I didn't answer your question. I was confused.
Well, and in terms of co-facilitator, there are people who weren't able to make the weekend who may be very much involved, and
Mhm.
I would propose that we keep that open until the first meeting when we can all meet.
Cool, that works for me. All right, so anyhow, outreach and network, I've got Ronnie, Jake, Linda, and Sandra as planning to attend, and maybe I have Roland and anybody else who's maybe, and Heather and April are maybes. Heather and April. Okay. And the current facilitator is Ronnie. And is there anybody who would like to be a co-facilitator with them? Maybe. Got Sandra as a maybe. Okay.
And we can explore it more too at the first meeting and see what, what people have capacity for.
I'm open to learning, so sure. And if someone else wants to as well.
Oh, shoot. So the maybes, Roland, Heather, and who was the other? Oh, April. What's the other April? Or was the other maybe? Okay. And how often to meet?
I don't think weekly is necessary. I was thinking every 2 weeks. at a max.
Every 2 weeks
Does
and
that-
maybe eventually going back to once a month.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2 weeks to start. All right, cool.
cool.
Keeps things well aligned. So we've got, actually, then that's 4 that are every 2 weeks. Barbara?
I don't have a note for the third guild, the finance and legal, what the meeting frequency was decided. Did we decide? or did-
Oh, we didn't. I think we didn't cover that. Thanks for catching that. So for finance and legal folk, how often? We've been doing every 2 weeks, right?
Yeah,
But then it's, yeah, so shall we stick with the every 2 weeks? Especially now at this period, there's a lot of balls in the air, so probably every 2 weeks is good.
can I just ask a question, because all of this is going to feed into a general meeting or a general circle, or what you're calling the coordination circle.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, for me, important to know, like, how often is the coordination circle meeting, and that we link into that, because
Yeah.
that's where we bring anything that we need to have discussed by the whole.
Yeah, and that was my next question, and basically there, in terms of scheduling, the caretakers take the priority. Because fundamentally it is the
Yeah.
caretakers and the caretakers and the links, the circle links that are involved in the coordination circle. And I was proposing at least weekly. We currently have we currently have a weekly planning meeting, and I'm proposing that the coordination circle, we have a weekly update and a planning meeting, and I am proposing that those get combined into the coordination circle, where we get updates from the caretakers on what each guild has been up to, what the plan is for the week. So that's determined before we come to the coordination circle from the last meeting. And people bring forward any tensions for the coordination circle to deal with. And so yeah, that would be a weekly priority setting coordination thing. Barbara.
Oops, I just muted. Do you anticipate that meeting time will stay the same? And
No, well, I
Okay,
was
you'll
I was
figure
going to
that one out.
propose that based on we now know we have a list of the caretakers mostly, and we use the same scheduling app, the same information from that schedule, and we find the time that works best for the caretakers.
and then
go
can
with
other people come to that meeting if there's capacity to do that?
everyone can come, everyone can participate, and it would be recorded and posted.
Oh, super. There it is. Okay, thank you.
Becca?
I think that was the same as my question about, is there a way to be a fly on the wall at those, if you're not a caretaker at
Yeah.
the,
Yeah. Well, and so I gave some thought to it, that basically the same principles would apply. So anyone who is interested in Lifeboat stuff, it'd be even the expanded circle, would get a notice of, this is when we're having our coordination circle, this is what's on the agenda. And if people can't come, then the same thing, agreements made during the meeting are considered proposals that are shared out, and people have an opportunity to voice concerns, or so the same basic process for the coordination circle as for the guilds. Cool. Any other? I feel now like we've done the guild work in terms of setting up. We've got the scheduling app out there, and we will make a summary of the charrette to go out at least by tomorrow, which will include an invitation for people who couldn't be here to fill that out. The meeting schedule. We've got our caretakers identified. We've got and the caretakers now are charged with looking at the schedule, at people's schedules, and picking best times. And we have agreed that we'll come into that first meeting of each of the guilds with some agenda items. We'll form the agenda the way we normally do and prioritize it. And so that'll also be part of the onboarding. And we will task all of the existing members of existing guilds with thinking through what are the onboarding points. that, you know, what do new members to the guild need to know to come up to speed? And I think that checks all the boxes, but I just want to double check. Is there anything missing? Are there any questions, any additions? Looks,
I have one quick thing. I need to communicate some schedule variations for this week, this coming week. I'm gonna email to friends at Lifeboat. Does that work?
perfect.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. That's just for this week.
yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I think that's a good, you know, really we've set up Friends at Lifeboat for as like that's the common inbox. It's the same idea that we're trying we need to build that skill a little bit more about monitoring the inbox, but the idea is we've got it set up so that anything that comes in can get routed to the person who needs to know. So it becomes the one point if you're not sure where or how to contact, go with the friend's email. Any other last minute thoughts or questions? Roland.
It just occurs to me that there's all sorts of little admin-y things like access to email and monitoring things and I'm still not clear which guild all of that fits into.
It's all assigned. So the
Okay.
CRM, the CRM actually is finance and legal, and the help desk, I believe the help desk is governance, principles and governance. So that
Okay.
would mean the inbox would also be part of principles, I think. And this is all like, again, this is in the spirit of experimentation. We have them assigned. If the guilds look at their assignment list and say, this doesn't seem to fit here, bring it back to the coordination circle. We can have a discussion if it fits better in one of the other guilds. So, and I wanted to, this is just kind of a random thought that occurred to me at the end of yesterday's coordination committee circle of, one of the things I love most about Sociocracy 3.0 is the idea of, in navigating tensions, the idea is the tensions are the indicator lights that bring our attention to what we need to pay attention to. So we don't have to over worry thinking about everything because we come up with the best we can. And then if we bump into something, then we've got a process that just lets us really gracefully respond to that. So for example, the inbox, you know, someone's going to think about it. Someone's going to, hey, hang on, wait, which guild does this go into? Do we have that covered? And so anyhow, I think that for me, that's actually a really important principle in how we're working is that we can relax into, all we need is good enough for now, safe enough to try. And as long as it's good enough for now, safe enough to try, we'll figure out the rest of it as we go. So I personally take a lot of comfort and relaxation in that. And you can't get it wrong and you can't get it right. We're making mistakes right now. We know that. That's okay. We'll figure that out later.
You know, and Ben, because this is such a new group without long history, collective history anyway, I think that can work. I know that I'm experiencing in my own cooperative, which is like 40 years old, that coming forward are the mistrusts or the experience we have with people that we don't kind of think somehow there's a trust element.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the foundation of all of this is trust.
Yeah. Yeah. And that also includes accountability because trust is,
Well,
you know,
trust is often really linked to accountability.
Yeah.
I don't trust you because you just don't follow through.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I'm not willing to give you that responsibility. I mean, I don't say that directly, of course, that's rude, but you know, that's the feeling that I have inside. And so going forward and agreeing that somebody will be responsible for something is only if you really have confidence that they are going to be responsible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and there's developmental delegation is a concept I came across when I was in Wisconsin, and it's sort of good parenting, but you know, it's extending the idea of good parenting to an organization where when you're delegating responsibility, and you know, the core of what we're doing is the whole delegates the influence to different parts who can take action around it. And when you're delegating, there's this range of, you know, at one level of delegation, you can say, here, make this go away. Just make this work. I trust you. And then on the other far, and it's a continuum, and on the other end is, here is a nice little discrete task, go out and do it, and then come back and check with me. And part of the developmental part is trying it at the right level of, and we've learned this through experience on the farm. We thought you could say, go weed the garden. And you can't. You can't. Even when people say, yeah, I know all about gardening. You say, oh yeah, cool, you can help. You go weed the garden.
Where are the cabbages? What happened to the
And then they weed out the chickweed, and I'm thinking, where is all the chickweed, you know, like a large component of our salad. Well,
Yep. So anyhow, this is, and I think this is built into the system, right? It's baked into the DNA of, and part of that developmental delegation is that it gets delegated out and you close the loop, right? So then there's a feedback and learning and growing process there.
mhm.
Cool. Okay. So any other points to cover, thoughts for the good of the cause? All right. We are ahead of time. I just want to point out. We got through all 5. We got what we needed. I also want to point out that we didn't use the circle to do it, and sometimes popcorn is just fine. So anyhow, being clear on what tools work when, and you know, having some flexibility. And we have a closing circle where part of the idea is to, you know, give us all, weave together, reflect on the experience of the weekend, and you know, kind of leave us all starting off moving forward in a good place. And I'm going to propose that we have a little bit of a break, stretch your legs, maybe even go out and get some fresh air, and we'll come back at 11:30 and weave it all together and wrap it all up. So see you in 7 minutes.